After about 3 years with no Justice League comic book, which seemed really stupid at the time, and I think in hindsight, ended up being very, very stupid on the part of DC Comics, not having one of your flagship titles out there for several years just so you could do Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, or whatever that stupid event ended up being from Josh Williamson that was basically a big-time failure and necessitated all this all-in kind of stuff. They are relaunching the Justice League Unlimited. Mark Waid, Dan Mora. I'm not going to read it because I don't support Mark Waid, but it's coming out there, and basically everybody is going to be a part of the Justice League. There's a lot of stuff about it besides just Mark Waid that I don't really like about the concepts, but DC Comics, I must admit, are doing their damnedest. They're pulling out all the stops to ensure that Justice League Unlimited on the relaunch is a big-time hit, pulling out a couple of the gimmicks out of the old box and see if it plays today. DC Comics is continuing its promotional efforts to get retailers to order additional copies of certain titles in bundles for less. So those who order the same or more copies of Justice League Unlimited #1 at final order cutoff as they did of their Absolute Wonder Woman #1 can then order additional copies of the main cover of Justice League Unlimited #1 in bundles of 25 for $25 each. They have also added new Hush-themed variant covers to the first issue launch that reflect that the comic will include a new 4-page prelude to Hush 2 by Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb. Not surprisingly, DC Comics' bag of marketing gimmicks has a whole lot to do with covers. It seems like big-time covers are what drives sales at DC and Marvel these days rather than actually having really good comic books. Hopefully that changes soon. Because I do think when you compare DC and Marvel, DC is certainly in a better spot when it comes to quality. They have more good books right now than Marvel, but they still don't have a lot of good books. But it's certainly better than Marvel. And going out there and saying, hey, if you order the exact same amount of Justice League Unlimited as you did for Absolute Wonder Woman, you can get a bundle of 25 A covers for $1 each, obviously coming in a 25 pack. Probably a pretty smart move. Don't know that this is going to do a whole lot there. I imagine some people will definitely take it, but as far as I know, the initial orders on Absolute Wonder Woman #1, and this was reported out there, more is rumor than fact, but it was like 150,000 copies. That is an enormous launch of a comic book title. Absolute Wonder Woman has a lot of newness. It's a new version of Wonder Woman. Kelly Thompson isn't probably as big a name as Mark Waid when it comes to comic book fans, but the allure of a new version of a character, not only is that going to bring Wonder Woman fans in, it's going to be DC fans in, Absolute Universe fans in, but it's certainly going to bring in the collectors and spec value and all that type of stuff. Does Justice League Unlimited bring that kind of desirability and interest with it? I'm not really sure, but Justice League traditionally certainly is a much better seller than just Wonder Woman. So perhaps DC Comics using these marketing gimmicks will be able to goose up the numbers maybe to 150. Who knows? Maybe it gets up to like 180. I doubt it. But they're obviously trying to give it that push, and I do think adding the Jim Lee, Jeff Loeb 4-page Hush 2 preview to the book and acknowledging it and said, hey, if you want to see what Jim fucking Lee is doing on Batman, in 2025, you're going to get a special 4-page preview of that. It's probably pretty smart. Jim Lee obviously has his own fan base coming along with him, specifically for his art. Batman Hush is one of the most well-illustrated Batman comic book stories of all time. Now, the quality of the story itself, I think it's perfectly fine. I don't think it's great, but I'm certainly looking forward to Hush 2. Including that in there, I do think will get people to open it up and see what's going on and having a good time with that. Now, as far as what they're doing with Justice League in Justice League Unlimited, we know that they're adding essentially every single hero in the DC universe to the roster. In fact, we've had some promotional art to it, and these are some of the names that have appeared in there that are apparently parts of the new Justice League. They include Starfire, Jaime Reyes, Blue Beetle, Ted Kord, Blue Beetle, Roy Harper, Metamorphose, Supergirl, Fire and Ice, Booster Gold, Robin Damian version, Shazam, Donna Troy, Black Canary, Green Arrow, Detective Chimp, Firestorm, Swamp Thing, Alan Scott, Jade, Obsidian, Mr. Terrific, Dr. Light, the Superman of China, Power Girl, Black Lightning, Dr. Fate, Tim Drake, Raven, Wonder Woman, John Johns, Zatanna, Yara Flor, Cyborg, Beast Boy, Guy Gardner, Flash, Aquaman, Mira, Hawkgirl, Orion, and Nightwing. And that's just one of the lists I had out there, and it's basically the entire roster of DC heroes. And it does, at least in my opinion, kind of take some of the luster off being a member of the Justice League, where you're not like the best of the best that Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman have wanted to bring onto a team with them, to work together to take on the biggest threats in the entire universe. You're just somebody with powers that claims they're a hero. You know what I mean? It does lessen what it means to be a Justice League member, but it's all the other stuff that really has turned me off, you know, just besides Mark Waid. Mark Waid's enough. But like the Atom Project, I went through the DC Comics solicitations for January, you know, cheap pop for the Patreon. You'll get that exclusive on there. And it's like all over the place. It's in like 3 or 4 books. They're mentioning Project Atom, where you get the 2 versions of the Atom in Captain Atom all working together. And it's like, are you serious? Why are you pushing that so hard? And now there's going to be like Black Lightning and his daughters are like the welcoming committee for the Justice League. And then there's another series about Renee Montoya being like the security guard on the Watchtower and investigating a murder and stuff. And there are so many stupid fucking elements surrounding this Justice League Unlimited. I think they should have tested out the theory and the idea and see if people liked it first before including it. Essentially, in like probably 30% of their books are now like Justice League spin-off books. You know, starting in January, I'm like, why is this all like, I understand you want a tight held, you know, continuity where things matter and something happened here affects things happening there. But why are we having all these characters like on the same team taking orders from one person dealing with stuff? Like it's I don't know, man. It's a little too connected. How's that for it? Maybe I'm just a complete hypocrite. There's no making me happy. It was like, maybe things should matter. And it's like, well, maybe not everything should tie together. Maybe we've gone too far in this one and putting every single member of the DC hero roster on the Justice League does not feel like it's going to work out. And there's some other just like stupid things out there. I think the Challengers of the Unknown are going to be subordinates to the Justice League now. Metamorpho, his book will be about being on the Justice League. And I don't know, maybe he'll be like the Justice League chef. It'll be Metamorpho. Like, I've been trying to get this fucking beef Wellington for Bruce Wayne, who expects a good product, and I just can't get the temperature right. I overcook it or I undercook it. Like, God damn you, Metamorpho. You fucked up my Welly again. How could you do this to me? And you run out of cool stuff for the heroes to do, like in conjunction with the Justice League team, and then you end up with the welcoming committee, and you got Black Lightning designing like fucking banners to put up. It's like, welcome to the Justice League. You know, here's your manual. Here's the do's and don'ts. Here's, you know, the bennies of being on the Justice League. Here's my daughter. She's going to show you around for the first 2 days at school, and then whoever's next will show them around. And I do think in the end, you take even some of these C and D list heroes, which certainly aren't as big as your Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman type characters, and you devalue them to such a degree because you give them such menial tasks. Like you're trying to elevate them by making them on the Justice League, but then you end up lowering their status and was like, I think I'd rather just see a Metamorpho story. Like, I don't want to see why he's such a bitch compared to all the other Justice League members. Like, why is Detective Chip on the fucking Justice League? I like Detective Chip. He's fine on Justice League Dark. Why the fuck would he be on the Justice League? Why is there the Superman in China? Why have they not given up on that stupid idea? Well, they decided, you know what we need to do to open up our DC comics to other cultures? Let's make Asian versions of all our heroes. Let's not take the stuff that's good and translate it into Asian languages and have a program to release them into those countries and see if there's a fan base for them. You know, since Superman is basically a worldwide known quantity at this point, so is Batman and Wonder Woman. No, let's make carbon copies of them. But say this one's from China. We'll get a Flash from fucking Singapore. You know what we've always needed? An Aquaman from fucking Cambodia. That's why we haven't been able to reach that audience, because Aquaman isn't from fucking Cambodia. You're like, I just think you're going about this stuff all wrong. And I do, even if Jeremy Adams was writing it, I would still read it and be apprehensive and hope for the best, because I feel like he's a good writer. But if like Josh Williamson was relaunching Justice League Unlimited and he had this team and we saw all these superfluous fucking things surrounding it in the other comic books. I'm like, man, I don't want to fucking read this. Like, it's too stupid. And so DC are pulling out all the stops. They want it to be successful. They're pulling out their marketing gimmicks, but they just might have a loser idea here. And then why the fuck would you put Mark Waid on a major book? Like, his Batman and Superman includes the two biggest heroes at DC Comics. You know, Action wasn't selling great when it launched. Detective was kind of on the way down. He's a big name, supposedly, and it was never a sales juggernaut. He was a decent seller. Then he went and did, like, what was it, Lazarus Planet? That thing bombed. He just did Absolute Power. As far as I can tell, it bombed too. I don't think, you know, despite him probably being one of their 3 or 4 best writers, Mark Waid is a fucking draw in 2024. You know, he's a known quantity. He's kind of an asshole. So the people that aren't tired of him personally, like me, are like, hey, you know, I've read all of his stories. Maybe he's not the guy anymore. So there you go. But there is another marketing gimmick. I thought this one was kind of cool. I'm not excited about Absolute Superman, but there was something that came out from Jason Aaron that I think a lot of people might be interested in. Absolute Superman writer Jason Aaron posted to Twitter saying, next week, a new era of Superman begins. Are you ready? Promoting several covers for next week's release. There was one cover at the top which hadn't been seen elsewhere and certainly got people's attention, even if you only got to see the top half. An unannounced cover by Frank Whiteley, who is best known in the Superman world for drawing All-Star Superman with writer Grant Morrison. And I do like me some Frank Whiteley. Frank Whiteley is a fantastic artist. Didn't even know he was doing that cover, and it looks pretty darn good. He's got a real good sense for Superman. Is it as good as, Gary Frank? Maybe not, but it's pretty darn close. So there you go. If you're a Frank Whiteley fan and you have some interest in Absolute Superman, be on the lookout for an unannounced Frank Whiteley variant cover that apparently nobody knew about until Jason Aaron accidentally previewed it on his Twitter account. So some more marketing shenanigans going on there for DC Comics, but at least they're trying, and it looks like they're being successful. Absolute Batman, a pretty decent success. Sounds like Absolute Wonder Woman success. You know, we'll see with Absolute Superman. I have my doubts on that one, to be completely honest, because I've been told what the hero is and kind of what the book's about. And I don't think a lot of people are going to love it, but the people that like it will claim it's the greatest Superman story of all time. And then the Superman fans will be like, yeah, it's really not. But it'll be that conversation all over again. We've only been doing that stuff for the last, I don't know, 20 years, maybe longer than that. Who knows? So there you go. If you appreciate what I'm doing here on Think Critical YouTube, providing all this news and opinions, a little levity, and having some fun, creating a community around comic books, and you would like to support that mission, I do invite you to visit me on Think Critical Patreon. There's a link in the video description. I already talked about some of the work I do with the solicitations, but there's lots of extra podcasts on there with Aaron Sparrow, Doc, Jim from Weird Science. We have a great time covering the gamut of geek topics, all centered around comic books. Hope to see you there very, very, very soon.